We were not born broken. We were born like sunrise over quiet water, soft and trembling with golden promise. We did not know that love could be a fragile country, that two hearts could sign a treaty and still declare war in silence. Lost us was not a single night of thunder, not a slammed door, not a last message left unread. Lost us was a slow fading, like ink surrendering to rain, like footprints erased by the sea while we were still walking. I remember your laughter when it used to bloom without effort, when my name on your lips sounded like home. You would look at me as if I were something sacred, as if my flaws were constellations you wanted to memorize. We built a small universe between shared glances and late-night calls, between secrets whispered under blankets of ordinary days. There were mornings where the sun felt jealous of us, because we shone brighter just by sitting close. But somewhere between responsibilities and pride, between words unsaid and wounds unhealed, we misplaced the map. Lost us in crowded rooms where we stood side by side but felt miles apart. Lost us in arguments that were never about the dishes or the missed calls but about fear, the fear of not being enough. You stopped telling me when something hurt. I stopped asking when something felt wrong. Silence grew roots in our house. It wrapped around the furniture, climbed the walls, slept between us at night. I would turn to you and find your back, a mountain I once loved to climb now too steep to reach. You would sigh like I was a storm you were tired of predicting. Lost us in the small disappointments we pretended were temporary. Lost us in the I'm fine that meant I'm breaking. Do you remember the first time we said forever? Tasted sweet, like ripe fruit under summer heat. We believed it. God, we believed it. We did not know that forever requires tending, watering, pruning, humility. We thought love was self-sustaining, like a star that burns endlessly without consuming itself. But stars collapse, and so did we. Lost us in the weight of expectations we never discussed. You wanted safety. I wanted passion. You wanted certainty. I wanted fire. We never realized we were speaking different dialects of the same longing. There were nights when I lay awake beside you and felt lonelier than I ever did alone. Your breathing steady, mine uneven, two rhythms refusing to harmonize. Lost us not because we stopped loving, but because we forgot how to show it gently. We turned tenderness into competition. Who cared more? Who sacrificed more? Who hurt more? Love became a scoreboard, and we both lost. I replay our memories like an old film with scratches and missing frames. The beach trip where you ran into the waves and called my name like it was a spell. The rainy evening when we shared one umbrella and laughed at nothing, thinking nothing could drown us. How strange that water now symbolizes distance. Lost us in apologies that came too late. Lost us in forgiveness that was partial, conditional, fragile. I wish I could return to the version of us before resentment learned our address. Before pride became a third partner in every conversation. You once traced my scars and promised to protect me from the world. I once swore to be your shelter when storms came. But we did not protect each other from ourselves. Lost us in the sharpness of tone, in the heavy pause after we need to talk. The day we finally admitted we were slipping felt less like an earthquake and more like a quiet funeral. No one else noticed. The world kept spinning. People kept smiling. But inside, something sacred was lowered into the ground. We stood there, side by side, mourning a love that was still technically alive. Isn't that the cruelest part? To lose something before it officially ends. Lost us in the space between holding on and letting go. Your eyes stopped searching for mine. My hands stopped reaching first. We became polite, careful, strangers with shared history. The first night we didn't say, I love you, felt like missing a step in the dark. We both noticed. Neither of us fixed it. Lost us in the comfort of avoidance. Because facing the truth would mean admitting we were failing at the one thing we swore to protect. Do you ever think about the version of us that might have survived? If we had been braver, if we had been softer, if we had chosen curiosity over accusation. Lost us to timing, to ego, to exhaustion. I still carry the ghost of your touch. Sometimes I wake up and for a second forget that we are history. Then reality arrives like cold water. We pass each other now in memory only. I wonder if you feel it too, that invisible thread still tied around our wrists. It does not pull us together anymore, but it refuses to disappear. Lost Us was not about hatred. It was about erosion. Tiny grains of doubt carried away by everyday wind. We thought we had time. Time to fix it. Time to talk. Time to rediscover what once felt effortless. But time is not loyal. It moves whether we are ready or not. And now we are two separate roads that once intersected beautifully. I don't blame you. Not entirely. I don't absolve myself either. Love requires two brave hearts. We were brave in the beginning, but fear grew louder than devotion. Lost Us is a story without villains. Just two imperfect souls who loved deeply and failed slowly. If I could speak to you one last time without defense, without anger, without pride, I would say, thank you for the light you brought into my ordinary days. I'm sorry for the ways I let my insecurities become weapons. I forgive you for the nights you chose silence over understanding. And I release us, not because what we had was meaningless, but because it mattered too much to let it rot in bitterness. Lost Us will always ache like a healed bone that remembers the break when winter arrives. But it will also remind me that I am capable of loving with terrifying depth. Maybe one day we will look back and see this not as failure but as a lesson. A chapter that taught us how to hold the next heart with more patience. Until then, I carry the memory of who we were. Two dreamers standing at the edge of forever, believing nothing could pull us apart. And even though we are no longer that unstoppable constellation, I will never deny that once, in a world full of chaos, we were magic. We were real, and we were us. And after the magic faded, after the house of promises stood empty, after echoes replaced laughter in the hallway of memory, I kept walking through the ruins of us as if something might still be salvageable. Lost Us did not leave all at once. It lingered in old photos I couldn't delete, in songs that still pronounced your name, in the quiet habit of reaching for my phone to tell you something small and ordinary. I still see your smile in the corner of crowded rooms, in strangers who tilt their head the way you used to, in sunsets that burn too beautifully to watch alone. Sometimes I blame fate. Sometimes I blame distance. Sometimes I blame the version of myself that was too wounded to love correctly. Because loving you was never the problem. Keeping you without losing myself was the puzzle I never solved. Lost Us in the mirror where I began to recognize a stranger staring back. I had shaped myself around you, bent like a tree toward your light, forgetting that roots need balance to survive the wind. And when the storm came, we both cracked. Do you remember how we used to plan the future like it was a guaranteed destination? The little house, the quiet mornings, the arguments about paint colors that felt romantic instead of dangerous. We believed that imagining something was the same as building it. Lost Us in the gap between dreams and discipline. We were passionate, yes, but passion without patience is a wildfire. It burns bright. It burns fast. It leaves ashes that still carry heat. Even now, when I say your name softly into the privacy of midnight, it does not sound bitter. It sounds tired, like a prayer that stopped expecting miracles. Lost Us in the heavy weight of expectations we inherited from stories, from movies, from songs that promised love would conquer all. But love does not conquer if pride stands guard at the gate. And we were proud, too proud to admit fear, too proud to confess jealousy, too proud to say, I need reassurance, without turning it into an accusation. I wish we had learned that vulnerability is not weakness, that crying together is not losing, that saying, I'm scared, can sometimes save a relationship more than saying, I'm right. Lost Us in the fragile space where ego grew louder than empathy. There were nights I almost reached for you, almost broke the silence with honesty so raw it would have scared us both. But almost is a tragic word. Almost is where we lived toward the end. Almost understanding. Almost apologizing. Almost fighting for it with everything we had left. And then one day we crossed the invisible line between almost saved and too late. Lost Us without fireworks, without dramatic speeches. Just two tired hearts agreeing that loving each other had become heavier than letting go. I wonder if you felt relief, if part of you exhaled when the decision was made. I felt both, relief and devastation holding hands inside my chest. Because sometimes ending something painful is also ending something beautiful. Lost us means I lost the version of myself that believed love was invincible. But I also found a quieter strength, the kind that comes from surviving heartbreak without becoming cruel. I refuse to let our ending turn me bitter. I refuse to turn you into a villain just to make the story easier to tell. We were two humans trying, and sometimes trying is not enough. Lost us will always live in the small corners of my heart where nostalgia sits like an old friend. Not to haunt me, not to trap me, but to remind me that I once felt something so powerful it changed the shape of my world. If I ever love again, I will love differently, softer, slower, with more listening than defending. I will ask harder questions. I will answer with more honesty. I will not assume that affection today guarantees affection tomorrow without effort, because love is not a monument. It is a garden, and gardens die when neglected. Lost us taught me that apologies must be timely, that silence can be violent, that later is a dangerous promise. I still hope you find happiness, not because I've forgotten how much you hurt me, but because I remember how deeply you once cared, and that part of you deserves peace. Maybe one day our paths will cross again. In a bookstore, in an airport, in a city that holds no history. We will smile politely, ask about work, mention mutual friends, and beneath it all there will be a silent acknowledgement. We survived each other, lost us but found ourselves, and perhaps that is not tragedy but transformation. I no longer beg the past to return. I no longer replay conversations looking for the exact moment we could have changed fate. Some stories are not meant to be fixed. They are meant to be felt, deeply, completely, and then released. So here I stand, not shattered, not untouched, but shaped, carrying the memory of a love that once felt eternal, carrying the lesson that even eternity needs care. Lost Us will always be a chapter one read with trembling hands. But it will not be the entire book. Because somewhere ahead there is another beginning waiting patiently for a heart that has learned how to love without losing itself. And still, even after acceptance learned my name, there are nights when memory knocks softly, asking to be let in. Lost Us echoes louder in winter, when the air is thin and the sky feels too wide for a single heartbeat. I sometimes revisit the smallest details, the way you stirred your coffee counterclockwise, the crease between your brows when you were pretending not to worry, the softness in your voice when you thought I was asleep. These fragments refuse to dissolve. They float in my mind like dust in sunlight, visible only when I stop moving. Lost Us did not steal my ability to love. It refined it, like fire refines gold, like pressure shapes diamonds, like grief deepens poetry. I am no longer afraid of loving deeply. I am only careful about loving blindly, because loving you taught me that devotion without communication is a beautiful disaster. We used to believe that chemistry was enough, that the electricity between us could power a lifetime. But electricity without grounding burns. Lost us in sparks that never learned how to become steady light. There were so many chances to choose each other again, at the edge of arguments, in the middle of misunderstandings, at the quiet crossroads where pride waited for one of us to surrender first. But surrender felt like defeat. We did not understand that surrender in love is sometimes victory. Lost us in the refusal to bend. And yet, I cannot regret what we were, because for a while you were my favorite person in the entire world, and I was yours. There is something sacred about being chosen like that, even if the choosing does not last forever. Lost Us does not erase the way we once fit together, like two puzzle pieces meeting at exactly the right angle. It only means the picture changed. And sometimes pictures change not because they were wrong, but because we outgrew the frame. I have stopped asking why it happened. I have stopped searching for a single mistake to pin the ending on. Love is rarely destroyed by one moment. It fades through accumulation, through 1,000 tiny hesitations, through repeated misunderstandings left unresolved, lost us in layers, layer of doubt, layer of exhaustion, layer of unmet need, until the foundation could no longer hold what we were trying to build. Still, I carry gratitude beside the grief. Gratitude for the nights we talked until dawn, for the dreams we dared to speak aloud, for the courage it took to open our guarded hearts in the first place. Not everyone gets to experience a love that shakes them awake. We did, even if it also shook us apart, lost us but not the lessons. I have learned that love must be nurtured intentionally, that affection must be spoken, that reassurance must be given freely, that listening is more powerful than winning. I have learned that boundaries are not walls. They are bridges between two independent souls choosing each other daily. If I meet you again in another lifetime, in another city with different scars, I hope we are wiser. I hope we recognize the warning signs before they grow loud. I hope we hold hands during the difficult conversations instead of letting go to prove a point. Lost us may have been inevitable in this chapter of our lives, but it does not mean we were meaningless. It does not mean our laughter was fake. It does not mean our kisses were illusions. They were real. We were real. And sometimes real things end without becoming lies. Now, when I think of you, I do not feel the sharp ache I once did. I feel a quiet tenderness, like touching a scar that no longer bleeds but still remembers the wound. Lost us is no longer a scream. It is a whisper, a reminder that I survived something I once thought would destroy me. And maybe that is the hidden gift inside heartbreak, the realization that the heart can break and still continue beating. So I release the anger. I release the what-ifs. I release the version of you that only exists in memory. I keep the love because it shaped me. I keep the growth because it strengthened me. And I let go of the pain because I deserve peace. Lost us was never about failure. It was about transformation, about two souls meeting at the right time for a season, not a lifetime. And maybe that is enough, because in the vastness of this unpredictable world, we found each other once. We loved fiercely, we lost gently, and we walked away not as enemies, but as chapters that taught each other how to become more whole.